Hello, and welcome to The Confident Commit, the podcast for anyone who wants to join the conversation on how to deliver software better and faster.
If you're looking to build a trusted ship, tune in, let's confidently commit.
I'm your host, Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI, industry leader in delivering software better and faster. Find me and talk to me about that later. Today, I'm joined by Johnny Austin, VP of Engineering at Upwell. Johnny, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
No problem, Rob. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Super excited. We've met on many, many different occasions. I've always been, often in conferences and stuff, always been excited to hear what you have to offer on many different subjects. So excited to have the opportunity to pick my subjects today. We actually also had a chance recently to speak on your podcast. So it's a little reciprocity, however you want to think about that. But what I think is really interesting, actually, as a starting point, is the topic, right? Like what you choose to cover there. You've spoken to a bunch of engineering leaders and really focused on leadership. And I know you talk a lot about, the mentorship that you had sort of coming earlier into your career and how that really helped you. And one thing that I noticed, again, speaking publicly, doing podcasts, is you're taking a lot of time and energy to really try to help other up and coming leaders, give them, I don't know, maybe the information you did have access to, the information you didn't. And I'm curious, like, what drives that? Like, there's clearly some motivation to put all of that time and energy into that. Like, sort of what was the moment that got you there, and what keeps you, pouring that energy into that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it has a lot to do with it's always been something that I thought that I could bring to the table, right? When I look at conferences and what people are talking about, I mean, the tech talks are really cool. I like consuming those, but I never really felt like I had anything necessarily that unique to bring to the table when it came to those topics. Although I will do them from time to time, but really the rules of the road in terms of how to actually progress through your career, particularly for folks who aren't entrepreneurs, right? I feel like this is America, and we really love our entrepreneurs. We're a very entrepreneurial country, and that's totally fine. But there seems to be less anecdotes or information about people who just like graduated college and they started their career and they didn't know really what to do or what to expect, and they kind of stumbled their way up the management ladder and whatnot. So providing a lot of guidance there around what to look out for, challenges that I was facing. Almost every talk I've done is about very specifically a challenge that I've faced on the job, like a real thing, and then like what I did to address it or whatever. So I don't know, just bringing that practical knowledge to the masses, and it always gets like a pretty good response. There's always at least one or two people that come up to me and say, "I'm really glad you talked about that particular topic." And if I can reach just one person, then it's worth it for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And particularly like highlighting the challenge. I want to dig into that a little bit, because I think a lot of what gets presented out to the world can be very polished, right? Like, this is the image I want everyone to have of me, that I knew how to handle this situation, that we had a great plan from the start. That is almost never true. Like, universally, it's just untrue, right? It's like, we actually had no idea, and we really struggled, and I made some mistakes along the way. And so I'm curious, one, I appreciate folks who are willing to take that. Was it, or like to take that road and really be, comfortable and just put it out there? Like, yeah, I struggled. Like, I actually, it went wrong in a few different ways. Was it hard to get to that place, I guess, is one thing. And what would you recommend to others in sort of in terms of putting that out there? Like, how do you do that in a way that you can feel good about yourself, I guess, in the end?
Yeah, it's funny because the only reason I did that is because initially I didn't know any better. Like, I didn't know you were supposed to polish up your image and like put out, and make it seem like you never made mistakes. So, that's how I got out there doing that. But also, even when I did sort of like learn like the right way to do this, I didn't find that very interesting, right? Like, I'm the guy that kind of rolls his eyes when like people get up there and they're like, head to toe with their suit and they're just like, this is how I did X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I'm sure it didn't go quite that way, the way you're explaining it. Why don't you give us the real deal?
Hmm.
I mean, those are the things that I've always found more interesting because they are real, right? That's the stuff that I would personally pay money to hear people talk about, not the carefully curated narrative that they've kind of, walked away with. So I don't know. It's the thing that I felt was worth it. It's the stuff that I find engaging myself. And so when I'm trying to put together a talk or a presentation or whatever, it's always going to be something that I myself would want to attend and listen to. And if not, then I won't do it, frankly.
Yeah, I love that description. I just didn't know any better. But the truth is, that's not better, right? Exactly as you said. And as
Yeah.
you were describing that, I was thinking like hero's journey, tension and resolution, like all good
Yeah.
storytelling,
Yep.
right, has failure and struggle and whatever. I mean, we all learned
Yeah.
this, but it's probably easier to conceptualize writing an interesting piece of fiction with struggle
Yep.
and challenge than to expose your own struggle and challenge. But I
Mm,
think you're exactly right. Like we're listening to talks, we're listening to people's stories because we want to learn from them, but we have to be engaged in order to take away the learning, right? And that
yeah,
engagement, I think,
exactly.
really does come from the tension and the struggle and the
Yep.
challenges. Well, speaking of tension and struggle and challenges, this is good. This is a little. See if I can turn this into a segue. You spent a bunch of time as a product leader, which is super
Yep.
interesting to me because let's just say in the world of tech, sometimes there's tension and struggle and challenge between product and engineering, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen many different ways of addressing that. One is like you get these CTPO, CPTO, whatever that is. It's like fine, just have one person own it, so there's
Yeah.
tension one level below that person. Like it doesn't go away; it just
Yep.
goes to a different
Yeah.
spot, right? But
Yeah.
I'm curious if doing that role changed your perspective now. Like now you're back to being a VP of engineering. Do you have a product
Mhm.
counterpart where you are at Upwell?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So
Yep.
so do you think you enter that relationship differently, having walked a mile in the product shoes, so to speak, like done the job and sort of seen what the challenges are from that perspective?
Yeah, I do think it has changed my perspective very slightly, but in very just like specific ways on what it actually takes to like do that job. But
Hmm.
I think overall, my perspective remains the same. I think going into product leadership or even product engineering leadership roles, which I've done in the past, again, I went into it like, as a way, kind of in a state of ignorance, right? Like when I started my career as a software engineer, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be interested in the product or the business side, right? It was just like, I'm writing code, writing, building enterprise Java applications,
Hmm.
JSPs and whatnot. But I'm just very curious about what do other people do? Like, how do they deliver value to the business? Or it's like, all right, if I push this button and this code goes up and it like does this deployment thing, like, what does that mean to you? Right? Like, how does
Hmm.
it affect your world at all? Because these are things I just didn't know, right? Because I had literally no real world working experience. And so getting to know people who work in like biz dev roles or like product development or project development or whatever. And I just always wanted to know how my work affected their worlds, if at all. And that was always like just curiosity I had. And that eventually led to me just being kind of in the right place at the right time, asking the right questions in front of the right people, and folks saying, oh, like, you could probably like manage product as well in engineering. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like a tech guy who asks questions about the business.
Hmm.
But I've had people, believe in me in ways that, I didn't believe in myself. And so one thing led to another. And getting a little bit more responsibility around product strategy and how we go to market, things like that are things that just kind of naturally came my way because I was asking the right questions in front of the right people, I believe. And so that's kind of how it worked. And so having to actually work in the role, obviously a lot of the specifics came to light. I will say it did change my perspective, probably more in engineering than anything else,
Mm.
because being on the other side, you know, knowing how engineering works and how teams build things, but also understanding now what the business places on the shoulders of product people. like the pressures that are there, and then you having to sort of separate yourself from that implementation and not having control because you have to work through your senior engineer or engineering manager or VP of engineering counterparts to get it done. It really did drive a lot more empathy for people in those roles because they have so much responsibility and so much on their shoulders, and they have to get it done strictly through influence, right? They can't,
Mhm.
they're not writing the code themselves. They're not, telling the engineers necessarily specifically what to do. They have the managers for that. And that's a very difficult position to be in sometimes.
Yes. I think definitely I've tried some other roles through the course of my career as well, and
Yeah.
in each of them, I've come away with that conclusion. Wow, that's a really hard job. Like, how can I
Yeah.
help that person, do that
Yep.
job better? And so, does that change the way also that you then influence your engineers to interact with product? Like, this is what they need from you in order for them to be successful, and we all have to be successful.
Oh yeah. I mean, prior to that, obviously I would always be an advocate for my product counterparts, but now it feels very differently. Like when I
Mm,
talk to product people, whether they're working very closely with me or not, and they, express their frustrations, like I really got to get this out, but the team is really busy. Like I will now work a bit extra hard to make sure that I make sure they get what they need because now I
mm.
know firsthand what they're going through and the frustration and the pressure they're under. So I think it's made me a bit more of an empathetic leader, specifically as it relates to my product counterparts.
Right. Well, I also love that you started that story as well with the like, I didn't know any better. I didn't know I was supposed to
Yeah.
understand the product, or that I wasn't
Yeah,
supposed to.
there's a theme.
But yeah, it's what's keeps coming up for me is like, isn't it interesting that the natural human instinct is actually aligned with the things that we should be doing to be successful, but somehow it gets taken away from us over time, right? Like,
Yep.
polish your image, stop thinking about the product. Like, I think the greatest unlock for engineers in terms of delivering value is really understanding the product point of view, because you
Yeah.
can you can increase your velocity linearly, right? Learn tricks, optimize your tooling, be
Hmm.
better with your IDE, whatever. But if you're just delivering the same thing faster, again, that's like a linear increase over
Yeah.
time. When you realize all the things you don't need to do because you understand what really matters,
Yep.
and you cut out entire chunks of work that really just are not going to move the needle, then
Yeah.
you get exponential growth in your impact to the business. And at least for
Hmm.
me, those are always the engineers that stand out, right? Are the ones that
Oh yeah.
just like you, like ask the smart questions about just what problem are we really trying to solve here? Who's the customer? What do they need from us? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always trying to look for that, during the hiring process, right? That's super important. That's another big thing. It's like I'm kind of uncompromising on that aspect of the hiring process right now
Hmm.
because I've seen it be such a big unlock, right? When you have engineers that are kind of asking the right questions and, kind of proactively going through like, okay, this all this stuff is on the board, but this is the goal we're trying to hit. Like none of this actually, moves the needle for that goal. Like, let me raise my hand, let me hail Johnny or my PM or whoever and have a conversation about it. And then it's like, yeah, you're right. This is stuff we can like do next quarter or whatever. It doesn't
Hmm.
actually move the needle. And like those engineers are the ones that have like the most impact in the organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great insight. I mean, you got to start at the front door, right? And then what's interesting actually in hiring, I wasn't really thinking about this until you just said it. You're selecting for that. Do your new hires know that you were selecting for that? Like, is there a reinforcement through how you onboard folks, through values or something that you share in the organization to really let people know, hey, by the way, it was this about you that brought you in here, and we want more of that. Like, don't let that go away. Like, don't listen to the internet. We actually do want you to be, a very
Yeah.
product minded engineer.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like there's an official step where I, do my grand reveal and here's why we hired you. But at some point early on, it's just, we do end up having the conversation of like, one of the things that stood out outside of like technical assessment and whatnot is that you ask really good inquisitive questions about the
Hmm.
business and about the product and what we're trying to accomplish, as opposed to, and by definition, this person would never actually make it through the process someone who's asking strictly tech questions, right? And there's nothing wrong with tech questions, but if you come through and you're asking, all right, which framework are you using on the front end, which database or whatever, and like those are all the questions you have, it's not a good indicator for me. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
we settled all that information, and it's not even necessarily all that important. What's most important is like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Like, tell me about your customers, or what are the challenges they're facing? Like, how are you, solving the pain for them? Like, those are like the really questions that I really hone in on. And like,
Mhm.
those are the thing that really help people get through the process.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated by this now. I kind of feel like it would be really helpful to tell people this is why we hired you. Like what a
Yeah.
great piece of positive feedback on your first day. I don't know. I've never done
Yep.
it. I don't think. Maybe
Yeah.
accidentally at some point, but it's certainly not. It's not part of the process. We do reinforce like these are the things that we care about. This is how we work. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which so maybe
Yeah.
people can infer from that. But
Yeah.
feedback is super critical, and what a great opportunity to just
It
give
is.
someone some positive feedback. I'm gonna stew on that for a bit, but anyway. um I mean, well, okay, so I'm gonna try another like choppy segue, but I was thinking about giving people positive feedback and making them happy.
Yep.
And I read this recent thing that you had put out there that I really connected with. Actually, I don't know how recent it is. I'll call it recent, about your job as a leader,
Mhm.
and sort of the mindset that some folks have that their job is to make their team happy, and you're sort of separating that from making
Yep.
folks happy versus setting them up for long-term success. And sometimes
Yep.
what's going to make you successful is eating your vegetables, doing your morning workout,
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's not the things
Yeah.
that we don't all love, right?
Yep.
But ultimately, it's like we talked about off the top, like caring and compassion for others and wanting to grow them is probably what gets you to the place that you can do that, right?
Yeah.
So one,
Yep.
but let's start with just can you separate those concepts? Like what is it that you think about as you're thinking about those two different notions of sort of happiness versus long-term success for your people?
Yeah, yeah. So that blog post was kind of brought on like all things, that I talk and write about from like a real world experience I was having, right?
Hmm.
Where, we were talking, I won't get too much into specifics, about, roadmap and about the things that we needed to do in order to set the business up for success. And if this person were to do XYZ, like they play a very pivotal, but they did not want to do this, right? It did not make them happy to do this work necessarily. And I actually had to have a pretty straight up conversation with this person. Was like, that's not really what we're trying to do here, right? Like, we're both here. We have an interest in the business and the business's success. And I, as someone in your management chain, am vested in sort of like your success as an individual. Like, these things are all aligned in doing this work, right? Whether or not it makes you happy, has really nothing to do with it, right? I wasn't so forward with that particular line, but that's basically what my feedback was. And so it got me to think about, overall and, throughout my career. And I haven't always had this attitude necessarily. As an early manager, I probably did optimize for a lot of people's happiness. And I don't think it
Hmm.
necessarily helped them. It didn't help me, right? And I talk about this in a post, but frankly, it's impossible to scale this whole thing of happiness, right? Because one, different things make people happy, right? You're never going to be able to like have any policy that does this in an effective way. Um, and ultimately, I think that having people be aligned with what the business is trying to accomplish and setting them up for, I refer to as satisfaction, right?
Mm.
Basically, what I can do for you is I can, tell you what success looks like, give you feedback, reward you when you do things well. And like, those are the tools I have as like a manager and a leader, and I can motivate you and do all of those things. But at the end of the day, if those things don't make you happy, I am ill equipped to deal with that, right? Like, that's something that's between, you and, you, whatever spiritual beliefs you have, if any, therapy, things like that. Like, those are the things that are going to help equip you to be happy within your life. I'm just like some guy in like the work part of your life trying to,
Hmm.
keep the trains moving on time. And so just really drawing a line between what I'm there to do and basically, what your purpose in life is necessarily. And so I think a lot of leaders kind of conflate those things because it makes them feel good in the moment. Like, oh yeah, I went in a one-on-one, I said the right things and I made this person very happy. but now they're not necessarily working on the right things because you have them working on the thing that they just wanted to work on or whatever. And so I don't know, it's just I wanted to get my thoughts out and publish that, but it was something that had been kind of on my mind recently.
Yeah, it's not surprising that it's from a personal experience, right? Like that's where
Yeah.
I think most of this had, which is again great, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I ran into this situation. It's maybe more people should be thinking about this. I
Yep.
It's interesting because I spend a lot of time thinking about I guess at the macro, a lot of time thinking about. I'll just say I've said many times, like if you choose a career, an occupation, whatever you want to call it, that you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy and that you have some kind of natural affinity for, you will
Yep.
be more successful than the opposite. If you like
Yep.
if every day at work is drudgery to you, then
Yeah.
you probably won't put in the extra hours. You won't be super curious about it and try to learn and be better and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like this kind of macro concept, which again, like my manager is not choosing my career for me, right? Like I got here
Yeah.
because this was the thing I decided to do. But then
Yep.
it's really interesting to note within that, you might like not every day is going to make you delightfully happy. Like sometimes there's just
Sure.
drudgery in this job. Sometimes there's drudgery in
Yep.
every job. And
Yeah.
sometimes the that drudgery is what's going to, to your point, move the business forward. And
Yeah.
so it's like forcing me to separate those things in a way, like
Mm-hmm.
large scale. Look, if you hate being a software engineer, you should probably think deeply on that and consider something else, right? Because like if you
Yep.
just show up every
Yeah.
day and you hate it and people around you love it and they're like so excited to get more done, and I like you're just gonna be you are gonna be sad all the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even if you love it, right? Someone has to fix this annoying piece of
Yep.
whatever tech debt. Maybe it's something. Right? There's
Yeah.
always something that's just like, or
Yep.
we have to take the shortcut to get to this thing, and we're gonna be fine with that. And like it's gonna be imperfect, and it's not gonna like satisfy our souls in terms of like the beautiful
Yep.
engineering work that we could have done, but it's gonna drive a business outcome, and we're making a conscious decision to do that, right? And
Yep.
I think those are important concepts to separate. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really helpful. And do you we don't have to use the example of that specific conversation, but do you
Mm-hmm.
find yourself then, you talked about motivating folks, trying to help people see that is long term better for them, right? Like
Yeah.
being a being able to connect with the what matters to the business, being able to
Yeah.
make a decision that is in line with what our product counterparts need or what our business, whatever
Yep.
we're in the business, but like
Yeah. I
whatever
mean
stakeholders.
that's squarely, within my arena, right? My job as like a manager or your manager's manager is like I need to connect that to your day to day, right?
Hmm.
If you're doing work, then you can't see the impact of it, and that's not giving you the satisfaction you need, right? It's my responsibility to make sure you get that context, right? Like this is why what you're working on is important to your team, and when the team delivers X, this is why that's important to the department. And that's why it's important to the business. You remember that goal the CEO talked about, last quarter? That's how we hit that goal, right? By you
Yeah.
doing this, which leads to this, which leads to that, and like connecting those dots for people. And what I found is that when people like see this, like it clicks for them. They're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? Like the task is not like the code I'm writing, like that's just a means to an end. It's like this is going to enable X, and then we can build Y, and then we get to the business goal. And now all of a sudden people feel they have an actual stake because they do in like the success of the business because they are directly contributing to it. So yeah, that's firmly within my job. So if I find myself in that situation, my task is to make sure they understand the context in which they're contributing to the business's success.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge. And it's what am I thinking about that? Like it can be difficult because the task can be so
Yeah.
small isn't quite right, but like there's so many steps, right?
Yep.
And as a leader, like your VP of engineering, you have all those steps in your head, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah, like in 12 months we have to be here, therefore in 6 months we have to be here, therefore next week we need to be here, and in order to be there
Yep.
this team needs to do this and this team needs to do this and whatever. And that one engineer is like, I'm writing a collection of functions,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
And that is so distant from like 12 months
Yep.
out, 24 months out, whatever. Um, do you, do you find yourself having to draw that whole map, or do you have some like shortcuts? Like I'm not really sure how to describe it. Like because that can be a lot, right? Like people ask me how I know something. I'm like, because I've been doing this for 30 years. Like I don't know how to
Yeah.
download my 30 years of experience into your brain right now, but I could try to
Yeah.
make this connection for you. So how do
Yep.
you navigate that? Like, there's that massive, massive gap.
Yeah, well, I do. It's been my experience that you do have to draw that map at some point, and you do have to do it like somewhat often. But there are ways to sort of like connect the dots that are, a little bit shorter, right? So that's where, you start to think about individual product goals. This is why working with product is so important, right?
Mm,
Like this is what the business needs, but all right, that's a little bit foggy right now. You're working on a team that's, working on a product that has customers. Well, this is the value we're delivering to customers, right? Like the customers that, your product or your part of the product is actually affecting, like this is the value we're delivering to them. And so that's something that people can see much more easily than like how it rolls up to like revenue or whatever, right?
mhm.
This is the thing that's going to be easier for customers when they log in, right? Right now, some people can't log in, you do this, now you fix that, right? You don't have to necessarily say, well, more people log in, they use the product, they either see ads or they buy things, and that, all the rest of the map. But if you can just see the value that they're delivering to their immediate customers, a lot of
Mm,
times that'll do the trick. And even then, sometimes you still need to like say it many times. My rule of thumb is, you know if I'm trying to get a point across or deliver a message, generally, right when I'm tired of saying it, I need to say it about three more times. Then I see change in behavior. But that's generally been
yeah.
the thing that I've observed over the past, I don't know, like 10-ish years or something like that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm curious about this, and then I'm gonna transition us to the next thing. But like within that I mean, I remember hearing at some point, oh, you repeat something 7 times or whatever, which is like such a random
Yep.
thing. We just like to use the number seven in humanity. Like clearly we just made that up. But and interpreting that in my youth as like I'll just say the same thing the same way 7 times, and on that seventh time, like I've magically like broken through,
Yep.
right? And later discovered I need to present it in this way for this audience, this way for this. Like people have
Hmm.
different learning styles, different. Like if I hear it spoken, or if I see a picture, or if I read it written.
Yep.
Like do you find yourself doing this like multimodal approach to trying to get that information to folks?
Oh yeah, for sure. Just my natural, I guess, proclivity. Like I'll start like writing first,
Hmm.
right? Like I start there because I get to take my time and I get to think about it, and then I send it out, and then like that's like kind of the first line of defense, right? Then we can have like a verbal conversation. It's like, all right, making sure everyone read the document, and it's like, all right, let me reiterate exactly what you read, but I'm going to verbalize it, maybe add a little bit more context, or and then allow people to ask questions. Then there's like the follow up, which maybe is like something else that's written, but then there's always the visual piece as well. Not always, but I'm less visually creative, so I go to that maybe last. But at a minimum, right before you talk to people, I like to kind of write about things first and have them
Hmm.
read that, and then they get to think about it and think about what questions they want to ask, and that
Hmm.
always leads to a much more fruitful conversation, right? So at a minimum, you're right, and then you talk to people, and that really helps because some people, in the meeting, they're getting information for the first time. They may shy away from asking questions, or they may think about questions later, and it's like, oh man, I was in that meeting with Johnny. I should have asked him then, right? So if you send material ahead of time, then it gives those folks opportunities to kind of think about things and prep things and whatnot. And the folks that ask questions in a moment, they'll probably just reach out and Slack, right? Which is
Yeah.
totally fine. So yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of value to sort of like that multimodal approach to sort of like disseminating that information.
Yeah. I love that. And for me, I also find that the writing helps me do all those other things better, because when I can't
Yes,
write it, I don't actually understand what I'm saying. Like I
exactly.
haven't
Yep.
gotten it clear enough or simple enough, and if I just wing it and start talking, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
and then maybe also think about this thing and whatever. And people are like, what on earth is this guy
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
Right. But
I
if
agree. Yeah.
kind of like taking the time to structure it and write it down, yeah,
Yep.
it
Yeah.
forces
It's
you
as
to
much for
clarify.
me as it is for everyone else. You're right.
Yeah. 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 Love that. All right. So I'm going to transition into our like segment that we've been using to try to capture this perspective from everybody. You started as an engineer, you went into product for a bit, but you're back, uh,
Yep.
and you've been at this a long time. But tell me how you first knew that you were an engineer.
Uh, that's a good one. So, well, a software engineer in particular. So when I first went to college, my major my freshman year was actually aerospace engineering.
Hmm.
And so I went through my first year and I didn't really like it as much. I thought I wanted to be an aerospace engineer because I kind of grew up watching, like cool documentaries and stuff on TV about astronomy topics and whatnot. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. Found out I wasn't very interested in it. And so towards the end of my freshman year, I was kind of panicking a little bit because I wanted to change my major. I was worried about my mom being mad because I was going to change my major, and I had no idea what I wanted to change it to. Um, and I was in my dorm room, and one of my roommate's buddies was a computer science major. And he was like, "Well, I'm doing computer science and I'm changing my major as well." And it's like, "Oh man, that's not going to work either." I was like, "Well, why don't you like computer science?" It's like, "Because go look at this." And he shows me what I now understand to be C++ code. And I'm just like, actually looks kind of interesting. Like, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but that's kind of cool, right? I'm having visions of like hackers and whatnot because
Hmm.
this is the extent to which I understood computers at the time. And I was just like, well, this was the days of like Napster and all of that, right? It was like, well, I really like illegally downloading music. That's cool, right? The internet seems really awesome. So like maybe computers are a thing for me. So I did change my major to computer science. And so the next semester, I had my first intro to programming course, and it was a C++ program. It was like calculate the area of a triangle or something like trivial like that.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I just absolutely fell in love with it. It was just like this is cool, like the weirdest stuff ever, but like really cool. I get to like solve these problems and like you do these special things with the keyboard and it just like understands what you're trying to accomplish and like spits out the right answer. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And so that's when I knew at that time, I wanted to do this for a living and I could probably do it, for the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's that's wild. Like I think because there's kind of this two-stage engineering, like you were in
Yeah.
aerospace, which maybe didn't fit exactly, but it still has that, like the broader, I want to
Yeah.
build things, I want to make things work, whatever.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. The
it's kind of like,
mechanics were there just in the wrong context.
right. It's like, what's the toolkit that I want to have then to
Yep.
do that, right?
Yep.
And so there's kind of this secondary shift. I mean, I didn't go through computer science at all. But ended up doing that sort of when I graduated because it was the late 90s and dot-com boom
Yeah.
and whatever. And it was just like, that's what everybody was doing. Um,
Yep.
but that sort of discovery and also interesting, like the person who convinced you to do it was the person who was like, I hate this. I'm definitely
Yeah.
leaving this behind and I'm going to go do something else. Did they take your spot in aerospace engineering? Like, do you know where they ended up after that?
Uh, I mean,
Uh,
it's possible they never even came back to school, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I mean, like his opinion didn't really factor into it. I mean, it's
right.
probably I'm referring a little bit to like the person itself, but I'm just like, to me, it
Yeah.
was like when I saw like the code on the screen, like
Yeah.
that was the thing. I was like, oh, like that looks kind of cool, interesting. And then also it was a little bit of like, well, if you can do this, well, maybe I was thinking about it the wrong way. I was like, I know I can do it, sort of situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super weird. I mean, it was a trend that continued. I mean, CS is not necessarily an easy major. A lot of people I started with didn't actually end up finishing the program, but
Mhm.
I had a great time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, congratulations. I mean, like, what oh, and you had like the fear also, like, what's my mom gonna say if I but I hope,
Yeah,
I mean, I can't speak for your mom, but I hope ultimately, like, as a parent, as someone who has parents, like, they want us to be happy and successful, right? And
yeah.
so
I mean,
so
I had a plan, and I had kind of taken care of it, and so it was all good. I didn't get into trouble.
well, it seems to have worked out brilliantly. So clearly,
Yeah,
that was some good decision making.
yeah.
Awesome, love that story. And again, congratulations on just like finding the right thing in there because you've done
Thank
very
you.
well over a very long period as a result of pursuing that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. It's been great to have you, Johnny, and as amazing as I would have expected. So humble and insightful. And again, like, I just appreciate your willingness to put the challenges out there. Like, I think that's something that we all need more of. One, because it makes great
Yeah.
stories, but two, because that's what people need, right? This is
Yep.
hard. All these things
Yep.
are hard. And when people sort of project that they're super easy and you should just be able to do it, I think that puts everyone else in a really tough spot. So
Yep.
again, appreciate all your candor and everything you're willing to do to help everyone else get there. But thanks to everyone for listening. If there's someone you want us to talk to on the show, I guess find me on LinkedIn. That seems to be working. A few people have been hitting me up lately, and I'm happy to pursue. If you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe on your podcast provider of choice. And Johnny, thanks again. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.